Okay, so the project we're going to work on today is portraits and focal length. So now that we just covered how to do different types of portraits, we're going to focus on the head and shoulder portrait. And we're going to show you the differences in the millimeters, so where you're zoomed in at on your camera. So we're going to work on 18 millimeters, then you're going to zoom into about mid, which will be your 35 millimeter, and then you're going to zoom into the 55 meter, okay? So on our kit lenses here at school, we're going to use those three places. So that'll be all the way wide, mid zoom, and full zoom. So if you're using your phone at home, simply be it wide, then you'll zoom into the mid area, and then again you'll zoom in all the way. All right. So the difference in what you're going to need to do is you're going to make sure that you keep the head and shoulder crop the same exact position. Okay. So what you'll do is you'll be at 18 millimeters. You're going to frame up your subject, making sure that you have the head and shoulders cropped there. Then what you're going to do is take that picture. You'll then zoom in to 35 millimeters, and you're going to notice now you're zoomed in, so you're going to have to step back away from your model, okay? So the model is going to stay in the same exact position. Your position or angle will stay the same, but you're actually just going to step back so that you can still have that same head and shoulders crop. You'll then take a picture again, and then the next step will be to zoom in to the 55 millimeter, and then you're going to, again, step back, making sure that each photo has the same head and shoulder crop. All right, so you'll take those three different photos and then experiment with different backgrounds. So go ahead and move positions, have trees, have buildings in the background. So that what you're seeing is you're actually seeing your foreground, middle, and background actually compressing together. So they're actually getting closer visually. So that's really the neat effect, that when you're moving in with your millimeters, that you're going to go from 18 wide to the 35 to the 55. All right, so whatever your lens at home has, whether it is a Canon, Nikon, if you have 18 millimeter, 17, or 16, you're going to go to the full wide. Then you'll move to a mid area, which is typically that 35, and then you'll go all the way to the 55 on the other end, okay? After that, we'll jump into the computer and we're going to make a chart in Photoshop where you're actually going to label each image in a row. So we'll do a triptych of the 18 millimeter, 35 millimeter, and the 55 millimeter, and then you'll use the text tool to write down the labels for each one. All right, so let's go ahead and take some photos and then hop into Photoshop. All right, guys, we are going to start with the most extreme 14 millimeters. All right, so this is a super wide angle lens. We don't have this lens in our classroom, but just for example of going through this demonstration, I'm going to start with this one. If you were to put this lens on our classroom cameras, the Rebels that we have, it would actually be a 22.4 millimeter lens. Now what I mean by that is there is a crop factor. Now we haven't really got into sensor size and how different camera manufacturers are using different sensors in their cameras, but there are a few different types, and I will get into that more later on in the year. But for now, we'll just kind of give a brief introduction to that, okay? What I want you to really pay attention to is this tree over here on the left and this tree over here on the right. Also, look at our Bokeh Blur. That's these little circle shapes at how the background actually blurs out. That's caused by our aperture and the shape of the aperture, okay? So this is 14 at 2.8, so you'll notice the difference. We're going to keep the aperture the same throughout this project for our demonstration here in the video. So just keep in mind and keep an eye out on these trees in the background and how the compression is actually shifting as we zoom in. I was right off the bat at our 20 millimeters f2.8. The equivalent would be 32 on our cameras. I want you to look at how far over this is shifted now and how much this has shifted. It's also gotten a little bit wider. So when you look at the width of this tree, it's going to look wider than in that previous image that we just had up, as you can see down here on the bottom right. Also look at her facial features and how they start to flatten a little bit more. Next up is our 35 millimeter, a nice clean lens. Look at this tree on our left here. It is almost completely out of the frame, and this one has come much further to the right and also much wider than the original image that we took. Also look at our Bokeh Blur and how much larger it is starting to show. All right, guys, now at the 50 millimeter, you're going to see that tree on our left gone, not even showing up in the frame anymore. All right. And then you can see our tree off on the right here, much larger, also shifted a little bit more to the right there. Again, our model has not moved. She has stayed in the same position. We've just zoomed in and then taken a few steps backward. The equivalent, if you were to put this lens on our Rebels, would be 80 millimeters. 80 millimeter lens. This is a really fun lens to play around with portraits. You can see this tree on the right is almost out of the frame also. And look at the size of the bokeh blur. All right. Very pretty blurring of the background there. And you can see on our facial features too, those have compressed a little bit more. Again, we're keeping our crop the same on all of these to the best we can, okay? You're going to shift a little bit, but you want to try and keep that head and shoulders crop pretty equal to the others so you'll be able to see the difference in each one. Next up, we have that 105 lens. We don't have this in the classroom, but I just wanted to show you for example. Also a 135 millimeter. And last up, we have the 200 millimeter. And you can see on this image, you don't even see the tree that was on the right anymore. It's gone. And this here was that branch that we saw in the far background in the very first image. All right, guys, now that we have taken those photos, we're going to dump those in our Google Drive. So make sure you're in your Digital Photography 1 folder, Unit 3, right-click, New Folder. You're going to name this Portraits and Focal Length. All right, and then right-click and upload those files right into there. Then we're going to go ahead and open Adobe Bridge. And what you're going to do now is you're going to see in the bottom right here, when you select on an image, it's going to show you all this metadata, and that will have everything from the date created, the last time it was modified. You can see the resolution, what camera it was taken on, and what we want is the millimeters. So the focal length here, you can see that it was taken at. You want to go ahead and find the 18 millimeter one. You're then going to rename it, your name 18 millimeters, the 35 millimeter, and the 55 millimeter. Now these are going to be your top 3 images that you think are the best set out of all of the ones that you took. So you should be taking at least 30 photographs in class, and then we're also going to create a contact sheet. Now remember, to create the contact sheet, you just select all of your images. You then go up to Tools, down to Photoshop and Contact Sheet 2. What we want to do is we're going to be making a chart in Photoshop. So you need to make sure you select the 3 images. So your 18, 35, and 55 millimeter. Go to Tools, Photoshop, and load files into Photoshop layer. Now remember, we've done this a few times, so we're just reviewing those steps. All right, the first thing we want to do is we want to resize this image to make it a little bit smaller so the computer can manage it better. We're also going to be making the canvas larger, so we make the image larger and we'll make it so that the canvas isn't extremely large. So go ahead and go to Image, Image Size, change the measurement to inches, and then I'm going to make, you want the larger number to 6. So because I did this horizontal for the video, my width is going to be 6, but you should be taking this in the vertical position, so it should be a height down to 6, resolution 300. Then go ahead and hit OK. Then we're going to make our canvas that'll allow us to create the chart on there. So you're going to go to Image, Canvas Size. All right, and we have 3 images. We want at least that space, so 3 times 6 is going to be the 18. Let's go ahead and go to 20, so we have a little bit extra space on the side. And the first stop we're going to do here, to give a little bit of space on the top and the bottom, let's go ahead and go to 5 inches. All right, and next I want to do Image Canvas Size because we want to add a little bit more space on the bottom. So go ahead and do 6 height and then hit this arrow here, which means it's going to add it towards the bottom. Now we want to create a background, so go ahead and add a new layer. Grab that and drag it to the bottom. We're going to name that our background. Come over here and grab the paint bucket, and I want to make a white background. All right, now we're going to grab our Move tool and select the 18 millimeter. Move that off to the side and grab our 55mm, which is behind the 35. Select all of these. Let's go ahead and center it perfectly center. And the next thing we're going to do is grab our horizontal type tool. Go ahead and start here. Now you're going to see that is a very large font. So go ahead and hit Control A to select all. Now let's bring our font down to, let's see, 72 still looks a little large, 60. I'm also going to change our font here. So depending on whatever your font was set to, you might need to change that. And then also our font color is white, which is blending in with that background. That still looks a little large. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. So we're going to label it 18mm and drag that and center it there. This one will be our 35mm. And then last one, go ahead and commit. Our last one here will be the 55mm. All right, and we're going to grab the move tool and go ahead and center those. And there you have it. Go ahead and File, Save As. Save one as a PSD. And File, Save As. One as a JPEG. And make sure you name it your name. Photoshop PS will work. Chart. Then you'll come down here. You're going to go to Choose File. You're going to select the 18mm. Add another file. Select the 35mm. Add another file. Select the 55mm. Add another file. Select your Photoshop chart. And your last file will be the contact sheet, and then submit. If you're using your phones for the Photoshop chart, you'll just select full wide, mid zoom, full zoom, and that'll work for this demonstration, okay? If you have any questions, remember to check the rubrics for your grades. If you miss something, you're more than welcome to go back and resubmit in the future.